In the previous module, I focused on the topic of self and shared with you the pitfalls of self-awareness and methods of self-realization. From today on, we will enter the content of the third module, intimate relationships. In our relationships with others, nothing is more important than our relationships with our partners and children. Therefore, in the third module, I divide intimate relationships into two parts. The first part is about couples, and the second part is about parents and children. Today's lecture is longer than previous ones, but I will talk about a very interesting topic in romantic relationships, which is physical attractiveness, or looks. I will discuss why the statement "you look so good, everything you say is right" has psychological principles behind it. Beauty is justice, beauty is success. You may ask, why is the theme of this chapter intimate relationships, but you started with the definition of beauty? Do you remember a widely circulated saying? It goes, liking someone starts with looks, limited by talent, loyal to character, and satisfied with companionship. Psychological research shows that when we have our first intimate contact with the opposite sex, it usually starts with physical attractiveness, because someone is handsome or beautiful. Moreover, we not only approach someone because of their physical attractiveness, but we also believe that "you look so good, everything you say is right." In other words, physical attractiveness is justice. A psychologist from East Carolina University, Professor Castro, once conducted a study on sexual harassment cases. He found that if the suspect is unattractive, they are more likely to be found guilty, while if the suspect is attractive, they are more likely to be found innocent. In other words, being unattractive is a crime, while being attractive is innocence. Why do people have the belief that physical attractiveness is justice? Psychologists use the halo effect to describe this phenomenon. In other words, if someone is handsome or beautiful, we tend to think that they have a halo around them. Psychologists asked participants to look at a stranger's appearance and then evaluate whether they were smart or foolish, interesting or boring, and so on. Participants usually think that those who are good-looking have better inner qualities, such as intelligence, humor, ambition, and they also believe that good-looking people are more successful in their careers. You may say that the participants and the person being evaluated are strangers, so this looks-only evaluation is meaningless. However, it is surprising that when psychologists further studied the inner qualities of these good-looking people, they found that the participants' evaluations were not random guesses. On the contrary, their judgments were quite accurate. Those who are physically attractive are indeed smarter, more interesting, more ambitious, and more successful. It is worth mentioning that good-looking people are much better at social skills than those who are not. The reason may be that good-looking people are often the focus of attention, so they have more social opportunities. Therefore, they have more opportunities to practice and improve their social skills. Through more frequent social interactions, these good-looking people become more witty and humorous. At the same time, because their social network is wider, they are more likely to succeed in their careers. So you see, beauty is justice, beauty is success, and there is scientific evidence to support this. Now, there is a basic question that you may be curious about. What exactly is physical attractiveness or beauty? You may say that everyone has their own preferences, so how can there be a standard for beauty? Indeed, everyone has different aesthetic standards, but a large amount of psychological research has shown that there are some common standards for beauty. What are these common standards? I will explain them in detail from three aspects: age, body shape, and facial features. Firstly, let's define beauty from the perspective of age, body shape, and facial features. When you go on a date, age is definitely a factor to consider. However, men and women have different considerations in this regard. Men usually consider whether the woman is too old and refuse to date her, while women usually consider whether the man is too young and refuse to date him. In reality, the situation of an older wife and a younger husband is very rare, while the opposite is very common. A survey of 40 countries has also verified this. Regardless of race, culture, or type of relationship, there is always an age difference between male and female partners, which can range from 2 to 3 years or 15 to 20 years, but the man is always older than the woman. This means that women consider mature men to be beautiful, while men consider young women to be beautiful. Secondly, we define beauty based on physical appearance. What constitutes a good-looking physique? For women, a desirable physique is an hourglass shape, with broad shoulders, a narrow waist, and wide hips, creating a shape resembling an hourglass. For men, a desirable physique is a V-shaped torso, commonly referred to as a broad back and narrow waist, with broad shoulders and a slim waist and hips. Lastly, we define beauty based on facial features. As we mentioned earlier, beauty is synonymous with facial symmetry. Psychological research has identified at least 2 recognized standards for facial beauty: facial symmetry and facial averageness. Facial symmetry refers to the degree to which the left and right sides of the face are similar. The more similar the left and right sides of the face, the more symmetrical the face, and the more attractive it is perceived to be. Facial averageness, on the other hand, refers to the average features of a group of faces of the same gender, such as the eyes, nose, and mouth, overlaid on top of each other using software. The resulting face is the average face. Interestingly, the more faces that are overlaid, the more average the resulting face, and the more attractive it is perceived to be. This preference for symmetry and averageness in facial features is consistent across cultures and races. This suggests that there are deeper reasons behind these preferences, which evolutionary psychologists have attempted to explain. According to evolutionary psychology, our core task as humans is to reproduce and pass on our genes. Therefore, our behavior, values, and preferences all serve this task. From the perspective of gene transmission, there are 2 fundamental elements required for genes to survive. Firstly, genes cannot replicate themselves, so they require another set of genes to combine with. It is preferable for these genes to be healthy and excellent, rather than carrying various disease-causing factors. Secondly, when healthy and excellent genes from the father and mother combine to form a new life, that new life requires adequate food and meticulous care to survive and grow healthily, in order to complete the next round of gene transmission. Therefore, the prerequisites for gene transmission are good genes and good nurturing behavior. Natural selection has internalized these 2 elements into our aesthetic system over millions of years of evolution, turning them into the definition of beauty. Although we may appear to be pursuing beauty on the surface, our behavior is essentially driven by the desire to pass on our genes. Symmetrical and average faces are signals of good genes. If the explanation provided by evolutionary psychology is correct, you may wonder, how can I tell from age, physique, and facial features whether someone has good genes or good nurturing behavior? Psychologists have conducted a test in which they asked female participants to judge the symmetry of male faces. However, they did not ask the female participants to look directly at the male faces, as that would be too simple. Instead, they asked the female participants to use their sense of smell to judge whether the male faces were symmetrical. They asked the female participants to smell t-shirts worn by the male participants for a day, and judge whether the smell was pleasant or unpleasant. Then, they asked the female participants to infer whether the male faces that had worn those t-shirts were symmetrical or not based on the smell. The results showed that female participants generally found the faces of men whose t-shirts smelled good to be more symmetrical. Conversely, the faces of men whose t-shirts smelled bad were found to be much less symmetrical. What's more interesting is that the accuracy of female participants' judgments was highly correlated with their menstrual cycle. When female participants were in their ovulation period, during which they were physiologically capable of becoming pregnant, their accuracy in judging the symmetry of male faces based on smell was highest. When female participants are on their period, which means they are not in their fertile period, their accuracy in judgment is close to that of flipping a coin. What does the result of this experiment tell us? The pleasant scent actually indicates that a male's body is healthier and has better genes. Men with symmetrical faces have a better scent, which means they have better genes. Women tend to seek out men with better genes during their fertile period for mating. Let's analyze the concept of an average face. We know that our genes are constantly mutating, which is the premise of natural selection. However, we also know that the vast majority of gene mutations are bad, and only a very small percentage of gene mutations are good. In other words, from a probability perspective, any gene mutation is bad. The average face refers to the average values of the eyes, nose, mouth, and other features generated by the group that created this average face. In other words, the variation of the average face is minimal. In other words, having an average face tells the opposite sex that my gene mutation is minimal, so I carry fewer harmful pathogenic genes. Therefore, when your genes combine with mine, they can produce healthier babies, allowing your genes to survive forever. Therefore, our face is our genetic map. The quality of our genes is written on our face. When two people are attracted to each other because of their appearance, evolutionary psychologists can hear the whisper of genes saying, her genes are really good, worth having offspring with, let me pass them on. Further scientific research has also confirmed this. People with symmetrical and average faces have fewer pathogenic genes in their genes, and they also have stronger resistance to diseases. After analyzing facial features, let's take a look at the other two beauty standards. We now enter the next subtitle, Age and Body Shape, which point to the lighthouse of nurturing behavior. Age and body shape, pointing to the lighthouse of nurturing behavior. I mentioned earlier that women find men who are slightly older than themselves and have an inverted triangle body shape more attractive. In fact, these 2 points indicate that men have more resources for nurturing offspring. Older men usually accumulate more resources, and they also have higher social status in society, which is easy to understand. What about young men? Young men have an inverted triangle body shape, and an inverted triangle body shape indicates that this man has high levels of male hormones. Men with high levels of male hormones usually have stronger aggression, which means they can seize more resources. Therefore, a man's inverted triangle body shape or older age allows him to provide more resources for nurturing offspring, thus providing better nurturing behavior. What does a woman's hourglass figure and youth represent? They represent her high fertility. The relationship between young women and fertility is obvious, and the hourglass figure represents that women have higher levels of estrogen, which also indicates that this woman has higher fertility. Therefore, body shape and age point to the lighthouse of nurturing offspring. For men, you are looking for women with high fertility, and for women, you are looking for men who can provide resources for the reproduction and upbringing of children.